Edit Share. And I've got with me today, I've got Andy Wild from Altered Images, Nick Frith from Altered Images, and Vernon Antcliffe from Chelsea Digital Media. I'll just go a bit of background about Edit Share. We're founded 9 years ago. We've got over 3,000 clients now worldwide, and we cover customers in all market sectors, so broadcast, news, sports, live events, post-production, government. With Chelsea, they were an early Edit Share adopter. They started off with a 3U rack series 16 terabyte system, and then over the years they've kind of grown at the same time as we've grown, and our product range has grown, culminating in just this last year updating their entire system, going from a tape-based workflow through to tapeless, and they're a traditional Avid editing house for all of the content for the Chelsea FC football channel. My colleague Andy Wild here is going to be going through a little more in depth of the workflow of what we do and what we've done at Chelsea. And then at the end, we can take questions from the floor, or you can come and see us and ask what you like. So to you, Andy. Thanks.
Hi there, my name's Andy. As just said before, I'm from Altered Images, a system integrator and a reseller based out of a number of locations in the UK. But in particular, what we're talking about here is the Chelsea project that we actually put together quite some time ago now, and obviously been a long dialogue and process between ourselves and the club. So, as I mentioned before, they had a very traditional workflow here, as we've all had in the entire broadcast sector as well as in the private sector. We obviously had slow capture from tape. They shot in traditional tape-based formats. Those obviously had to go into a deck. They then had to be ingested into the edit stations, and also from the edit stations they would be laid back out to tape in order for delivery to either a transmission stream or potentially from the Avids as well, exported in a file-based delivery format, because obviously now ever more popular delivery formats like web streaming and the like, and obviously things with Chelsea FC, as we'll see a little bit later on their website. So there's just a few points there. Slow real-time capture, island editing, we've all seen it before. Close to where transmission times is very difficult. Obviously, if you're using traditional linear sweeps, then you're laying out to tape. Can be obviously very time-consuming for that, and obviously you could end up missing a transmission deadline. And logging of all the assets was very disjointed, if at all, as we mentioned before. And obviously, any football club, a lot of their assets themselves are the actual stock shots, be they players, be they managers, or be they key landmark games, as it like. And obviously in this traditional workflow, it's very, very difficult to find those assets easily and then repurpose them for later versioning, as it were. So that's just a traditional workflow in kind of a grammatic form, shooting the camera. As we said before here, standard definition was the traditional weapon of choice. Onto tape, multiple decks, obviously there's an overhead there to keep those decks going as well, and then to non-linear suites, which usually would either lay back to tape or, as we said before, would be exported in a particular file structure. So the first thing we had to do with Chelsea was actually go and see what they were hoping to achieve, and also what their expectations of what a system could do for them. So we said here, one of the problems with particularly with a football club is the fact that it's much closer to a newsroom environment. We have live football matches coming in, we have player interviews, we want to log that material quickly and then repurpose that very quickly as well for either immediate transmission or repurposing at a later date. So they were the key things that we kind of came across within Chelsea, that they wanted to streamline the whole thing, and obviously the key thing, as we hear with everybody now, is going to a tapeless workflow. So these were the key things as well within that. Obviously we've decided that yes, you need to go to a tape-based, away from a tape-based workflow to a non-tape. And these were some of the key points we came across here. One was moving from standard definition to high definition. The agreed mastering format was going to be AVC HD through P2 cameras ingest on site, as it were. And then actually in the studio itself, we have ingest systems that can also ingest at P2 AVC intra as well. These are all 100 megabits we're talking about here. The other problem that was within the club was actually a physical disjoint between the Stamford Bridge and the training ground. We wanted a way of being able to link those two systems together so that whatever happened at the training ground could be easily transferred back in-house, so that the assets themselves could be either later logged or used much closer rather than having to wait for a bike to pick up the tapes and then ferry them across the physical distance. So again, a network was deployed to do that. But obviously physical distances always tends to come how deep are your pockets, I'm afraid. But there's obviously a few different variations we can do at cost-effective points. Another thing that we have to take into account is obviously that Chelsea were currently using their traditional base workflows, and we had to do a stage migration. We don't want to say to somebody, well, actually, for the next 2 weeks, you are generating no output whatsoever. Not too bad when it's outside of the season, but obviously an important thing to remember that we actually had to migrate the systems over without any loss of service. And as we'll see as well here, in that loss of service, we also have to agree that the staff have to be trained, because going from one system to another, not only can you put new kit in that's also slightly alien to other people, it's understanding the workflow and it's understanding how they use that equipment effectively as well. Another point down there was obviously you had to agree a metadata structure, which we'll see a little bit later on when we're coming into the logging of all the material from the live games. System migration, I've pretty much mentioned that before, as I said before. Just make sure that we move the channel over on a kind of a stage-by-stage basis without loss of service, and make sure we train everybody, and also make sure we've instilled in the staff the right ethics. So these are the actual technical bits, in effect, as far as we're concerned, of the actual workflow. We need to ingest material. So for live football matches, rather than actually having a regular VTR deck, like a digibeta or anything like that, that's been superseded by, in this case, these Jeeves ingest servers. They can actually have a single unit that can have multiple channels of record. So in this case, it was 4 channels of record that can actually be pushed straight from the actual Jeeves server onto the centralized local storage, which means that everybody can have access to that material as it's being ingested. The storage itself obviously sits right at the heart of the entire system. Chelsea here have actually gone for 96 terabytes of EditShare's Extreme storage array. This can be expanded further at a later date. And actually, as you'll see a little bit later on from the later slides, the non-linear editing side of things is based around Avid's, and obviously EditShare have a long relationship with Avid sharing of projects and the like. Okay, so this is where there's now kind of a huge step away from traditional tape-based workflows. This is where we're looking at asset management, as it were, and this is using EditShare's flow system. One of the things we mentioned earlier on is that as a live match is coming in, it would be great that we could actually log material as it's there and then, with multiple loggers, maybe a dozen people, all logging different aspects of multiple games as well. And that's quite easily done by using the logging tool inside Flow. And actually we can build templates up, so we can actually go to a customer, establish exactly what they need, and then we can end up building something that looks quite bespoke to them. So in this case here, this is the logging screen. And as you'll see down the bottom right hand corner, if I just zoom in here a little bit, we can see here all the players, we can see the training, the Premier League opposition. What we can basically do is we can very quickly, with one button presses, we can log vital information very, very quickly. It doesn't take long to train people, but we can get accurate metadata associated with the clips, which then kind of lives with those clips for the entire duration of the project. So it means that it can marry right the way through from the logging through to the non-linear editing prospects of it, to the Avid edit stations, and finally onto transmission. Obviously, the other thing that we also need to be able to do is manage all these clips. Managing those clips can come in a myriad of formats. It could be basically deleting material when you're finished with it. It could be archiving material away. As I mentioned before, a lot of these systems that are used within any football club, the actual material itself is their gold, as it were. They need to make sure it's stored away in a safe environment. And in this case, Flow interacts with a third-party bit of software, which is also generated through EditShare, with a bit called Arc. This is the management end of the system. We can do multiple captures through Flow as well. We can also do file-based ingest, so it means that we don't have to tie up edit suites to actually capture the likes of AVC Intra or XD-CAM material. Don't have to take an edit suite up at all. A lot of the actual management stations, which are just general PCs, can then be used for uploading assets themselves directly without tying up an edit suite. So which ties onto the edit element of it. As we mentioned before, Chelsea have a number of Avid workstations, around about 4 from what I understand. They've had them for a long time. They've been a long-term user of Avid, and it was just like their weapon of choice, which, as we said, So edit with the Avid, decide what your delivery format's going to be, push it back to either transmission or in some cases export for file-based delivery, as we'll see a little bit later on. Archiving, I mentioned a little bit earlier, again through the actual asset management system, we can archive either an entire match, individual players, certain clips. We can subclip material down that's of interest, maybe a yellow card, a goal, whatever it needs to be. And those can be pushed then onto EditShare Arc, which is basically LTO-based technology, which means that material is bounced onto a set of drives before it is then crawled over and then placed onto LTO tape, which has a very long life expectancy as opposed to discs, which obviously are very transient. This is a rather dull picture of the technical breakdown of the Chelsea. So all the key components are there. If you kind of start at the very top, these are our Flow browse clients. So these enable us kind of to have login stations and browser material. To the right-hand side, you can see there's 4 Avid Nitrous DX systems as well, which are where we do all the post-editing. Those feed down into the core network switch. And to the left, you'll see that there's the little item here that has the 4 in and out arrows. These are the Jeeve servers that do the ingest for live matches and the like, which then obviously can be logged through the Flow browse. Below, to the right-hand side of that, I then should say there is the EditShare storage series with our 96 terabytes of storage. Below that is then the archive solution, which is our tape-based long-term archiving. And to the left, there is the Flow database server. Another beauty about the Flow database server is the fact that even though you take your full resolution assets, the system can be crawled over by the Flow server, and it can create low-res proxies for you, which can be kept on the actual database server. And even though you archive all your master shots away, you can still actually view the low-res proxies. And then if you say, well, yes, that's a shot that I definitely need, you can always ask it to be retrieved back from the arc at a later stage. The important thing to understand here is a very straightforward topology. And what we mean by that is that the network is relatively straightforward. There is a single switch, as we're showing here. Technically not true, but never mind. There's a single switch here, which everybody feeds into and out of. So the other beauty about this solution is it's not particularly overcomplicated from some points of view, and there are all discrete components that go to make up your ingest, your storage, your archiving facilities, and your flow functionality. So delivery, this is the final step. Obviously, we're saying now most people are now looking to do electronic delivery in a file-based format, in a wrapper of some description. And more common now is things like web delivery. So, Chelsea FC has a very high hit rate, has a lot of demand, and obviously we need to encode for those formats. And there's various ways that can be done with third-party encoding watch folder functionality. Or if you really wanted to, you could export directly out of your nonlinear edit suites if you wanted to. And a final note here just says, with a complete asset management system, it allows for multiple versions to be prepared and easily deployed for the desired formats. And that's really key to the whole thing now. As we don't know what's around the corner, so flexibility is one of the key assets of this system. If tomorrow a new codec XYZ comes out, that's a simple way that can be addressed. So long as we can export that function, there's no impact to the overall asset management system. So it's that flexibility for that file delivery format at the end that's really important. Thank you. I'll pass back for a few questions and answers.
Hi, thank you. Are there any questions? It's probably one for Vernon, I'd have thought.
Probably one for me. When we were choosing it, we looked into sort of other people that do the same sort of thing in the same business, and I think the biggest player in that is Sky Sports. We went to speak to Darren Long at Sky, who at that point had not quite made the decision to go P2, but we got the indication that was probably the way they were going to go. So we decided P2. One of the reasons for that, we've got our own cameras, we've got our own equipment and everything, but occasionally you want to hire in freelance. You may suddenly find a story drop and you want to get a cameraman to a place and none of your cameramen are anywhere near, and it's a lot easier if it's the same format, it's the same camera, or if you want to swap equipment, borrow equipment, stuff like that, it's the same piece of equipment. So P2 seemed the obvious choice for us because it's effectively the sports acquisition format, and I think will be for a long time to come.
Is it an I-40?
No, it's It's an LTO5 16-slot loader, so the tapes can come and go. Certain tapes are assigned to certain different projects, so particular tapes are assigned to matches, others to the news aspect. So the archive can be split in the same way that kind of the projects are made up within the Avid. But LTO5, kind of 1.5 terabytes per tape.
Yeah, each tape is 1.2 terabytes capacity, but the nature of ARC, the way it works is it compresses some things but not others. So you can never get an accurate, the ARC will tell you how much space there is on the tape, but you can never actually guess it in the first instance because the metadata, for example, would be compressed. The media probably not be uncompressed. So it's quantum. Yeah, there's two manufacturers that we back for our ARC tape solution, Quantum and Spectralogic. Anything else? No? Okay, to the bar. Thank you.